So, today we'll be looking at a scenario where the U.S. invades Canada, so let's get started. So the U.S. has three main targets, and that is Toronto, Ontario, Quebec and Nova Scotia mainly, and Vancouver. So let's look at where it starts. So we have American troops crossing into Ontario and taking over a small portion of the state province thingy. Then we have the U.S. cutting off Nova Scotia from the rest of Canada. And we have small pushes from Minnesota, although that is stopped. And even pushed back. And then we have the Americans attempting to take over Vancouver. We do have Canada taking over. Well, essentially, they take over one thing up north. This entire thing kind of just dies. But with Alaska not being that strong, Canada is able to move in and take over that. As if they take over like Juneau and the other city, I forget. They've essentially got that entire area under control. Then we have a small push into around North Dakota from Canadian troops. And we even have Canada pushing into Maine a little bit. Next, we have the Canadians pushing back the Americans. And they did not expect that much. That's kind of annoying. That's really annoying. Oh, please, no. Well, I've got to go into a smaller view. So we have Canada pushing back the Americans, and they surrender to Canada there. Although while doing this, the Americans do push them out of Maine. And a stalemate does occur here. We have the Americans continuing to push up on Vancouver Island, and even taking the city. I think it's Victoria, or it's just called Vancouver as well. But yeah, they take over this portion as most of their troops were over here. We do have the Canadians getting pushed back over here. Although, in favor of Canada, we have the UK and Australia and New Zealand. And their invasion of Canada does break any friendly ties. So British troops do start their way to Canada. So the U.S. knows they have to make a push between British before British troops can start rolling into Canada, because that will slow them down a lot. So we have them attempting to cut off this part of Ontario, and they actually managed to do it. Although their fronts over here are pushed back, and Canada does manage to win some naval battles over here. And they even push back the Michigan offensive a bit. But eventually, more and more American troops are coming over. Don't know why it's turning gold, but it's whatever. And eventually, this part of Ontario does surrender to the Americans. And Toronto's like here or something, so they do take over that. And they take over this island, and from there they start some small naval invasion up here. They also use the Upper Peninsula of Michigan to push into Canada even more. Although British troops are getting sent over here, and Maine's not really, the best place, so a large portion of Maine does get invaded. Although this does get slowly pushed back again as American troops from New York and Massachusetts do get sent up here. When Pennsylvania and Michigan, Ohio and Illinois troops do get sent over here into Ontario. We have the Canadians getting fully pushed out of the U.S. in North Dakota. And from here we have the Americans pushing back into Canada. We have them using this little Minnesota thing to push up into Winnipeg, and they send a lot of troops up here. With Vancouver being lost, we have the Americans continuing to go up the coast. And this may seem a bit unrealistic, but for the Americans to be able to do this, but this is over the course of like a few months, so yeah. They still haven't gotten to Montreal and Quebec City, so they continue to push closer and closer from their Ontario offensive until the entire state is almost captured. We also have, though, the Canadians getting fully pushed out of Maine. If only I could just... This is a little annoying having to do that, but... yeah, it's fine though. So we have them cut off Canada here, and they push in over here. They take over Prince Edward Island, and then they continue to push down until Nova Scotia does surrender. And Montreal is like here or something, and Quebec City is like over here. So that's their main targets right now. So they continue to push up. They also go along the coast and take over this island and start some naval invasions here, which all eventually meet up to create a big offenses over there. Take over a small portion of Newfoundland, but this is pushed back. Then we have the Americans taking over all of the Great Lakes and fortifying their position. Next, they have a spearhead from over here and encircle the city of Montreal. And then the city falls. Eventually, they start to spearhead over to Quebec City. And they take that over. Over here, though, with more and more British troops coming over, we have them getting pushed back until they almost take over the city of Quebec, the Quebec City. But the Americans do manage to hold on to it, but they do cut this off and eventually start to starve it out until they retake the city and start to push the Americans back. Although they considered making France and Spain maybe joining in, and the rest of the EU from there, they don't. Instead, they just invade Newfoundland, and another stalemate does happen. But to break the stalemate, the Americans do attempt to navally invade and cut them off. But this is pushed back, and all American troops over here will have to surrender. Although Newfoundland does surrender to the Americans after hard-fought battle, after countless hard-fought battles over there. We do have the Americans retaking Quebec City, and after this, the British start to end their stop sending troops to Canada. After this, as the Americans have taken over most of Canada's population, to be fair. So with that, and before the surrender, we do have a large portion of Alaska just going to the Canadians, as they just need to do one road, and the 12 people who live over here no. But this is the only sort of populated area of Alaska, semi-populated area, and they aren't able to take that over. Although the Canadians do surrender to the Americans. And the UK and the Australians do stop sending troops, so that's also shown as a sign of surrender, as they don't really care about Canada at this point anymore. So let's look at what the peace treaty would be like. So let's just go back really, really far. And let's look at the peace treaty, so you can see the fighting here. So this is a bit annoying, just undoing all of this, but so we have a full annexation of Canada, and I'm pretty sure this makes the US the second biggest country, maybe the first, but I think Russia would still be higher, because if you compare them, I would say it's pretty close, to be honest, between Russia and the US now. But it will be a full annexation of Canada. So if you enjoy this video, please subscribe, and thanks for watching, and goodbye.